With a meek strut, you walked into your office. The noise of dragging scales right behind you. Occasionally a quiet hiss was added to the mix. You were deeply in thought as you scratched your chin. Meanwhile, your co-workers were whispering behind you.
Miss Blossom, they are talking again.
The others looked over their cubicles after you. With a sigh, you entered your own office. Sitting down behind the desk, without giving your extreme case any mind as you sat down in front of you. Heaven worked with an interesting sort of job system. All jobs were taken on by cherubs and low-level heaven-born angels. But innocent-born, such as yourself, could take any job at any time voluntarily, for some benefits. This was to customize your personal heaven experience, since some innocent who went to heaven really liked working. Some not so much, and just wanted eternal retirement. You yourself had become bored a few years ago and joined a very easy job with a very important sounding name: Civil Affairs. Of course, in heaven, civil affairs usually just dealt with minor incidents, such as, "My neighbor was too loud last night," and, "Oh my god, my son ended up in hell, is there anything I can do?" Or your favorite. So like there's this lady from across the street and she like has obscene gardening gnomes and I like demand they be like sent to hell as punishment. Like, oh my god, how can you do that? It's heaven. Hello. So yeah, it wasn't like on Earth where civil affairs were military peacekeeping operations or stuff that required any higher education such as judges or doctors. If anything, it felt like being a very, very cheap therapist dealing with equally cheap issues. Well, it was called heaven for a reason. But there was one more important thing. Jobs in civil affairs were helping innocent-born angels decide in which virtue they were to be settled. Heaven had 7 banners called the Virtues. They were the equivalent of hell's circles. Just that traveling in between virtues was allowed. It was just simply so the innocent had a place they could get their mail and could call home. And were amongst each other. And right now, before you sat a very, very interesting angel. With an even more interesting case. A grey snake-shaped angel going by the name of Sir Pentious. He had been kept in custody for a very long time, as it came to light that in fact, demons can be redeemed and go to heaven. He was the first. Since this had never happened before, there were no rules for this. So you had your hands full. Problem was, you didn't fit into any of the 7 virtues. Chastity was out of the question, as according to his record, he participated in multiple orgies. Temperance was also a no-no, as the angels there were primarily vegan, or at the very least, vegetarian. Putting him in charity only caused him to laugh and say no. Diligence, well, that had been interesting to him, but you knew he would be disliked there, as the innocent and diligence were quite militaristic and mean. Diligence was where you personally sent all those doomsday preppers, dead military guys, and Trump voters. Hey, you never got a complaint out of it. Patience could have been a good competitor, but the archangel in charge of the place refused to open the door, simply because everyone on that banner was a pushover, and they were afraid that Sir Pentious would try something terrible. Same was with the virtue of kindness. The only one left was humility, which, well, the virtue represented the opposite of the sin he had committed primarily in life, which was pride. And while that would have been great symbolism, it was obvious that he definitely did not fit there as well. And yet, you didn't want to keep him at Central. He would set a precedent for all other demons who'd be redeemed. And in Central, that's where new innocents arrived after their deaths. It was supposed to be an in-between until a virtue had been chosen. And if now more demons were to arrive, redeemed as angels, well, that could turn Central into... You shuddered at the thought. Detroit.
Perhaps.
You raised a finger, a sign for him to keep quiet. Do you really, really not want to at least try charity? Sir Pentious shook his head.
Miss Blossom, please, I'd like to suggest...
Again you raised a finger, causing him to cross his arms, impatiently. You leaned back. Diligence had been the only place you haven't tried yet that he would be willing to go to, but sending him there would definitely end in tears. A former demon sent into the heart of people even you, as an angel, would consider too conservative and barely fit for heaven to begin with. It would be like setting up a gay pride parade in the heart of Saudi Arabia. Sheesh, you shuddered at the thought. I guess I have an idea, you suddenly said, as you grabbed his papers again, going through them. And what did you say you were in hell?
I was a great inventor of terrible weapons.
He raised his fist triumphantly.
And I was the leader of a fearsome band of brave warriors.
Right. Right. There were photos attached to his files. You looked at one of them. Egg Boys, you called them, correct?
Yes. The greatest fighting force in hell.
Somehow you doubted that. You lost your train of thought as you looked at another picture of what seemed to be a big zeppelin made of copper and brass. It looked very spiky and dangerous. And finally, Sir Pentious could no longer hold himself back.
What if I become a nomad?
You blinked multiple times as you thought. Nomad.
Yes, I travel around heaven. See all the fun things there are to see in heaven. And I don't have to settle for a singular virtue.
You'd be willing to do that for all eternity? He nodded. Well, we do have nomadic angels, you muttered, reaching for a folder on your desk with registered innocent-born angels that had been recorded over the years. The thing was really big, with hundreds of subcategories, though you just wanted an example. Like these guys. Under category N for nomadic, you had gone to the subcategory of C, quickly going through pages until you landed on clairvoyance. There, under the letter O, you picked out the oracle angels with their clairvoyant eyes. Oracles travel all throughout heaven to use their clairvoyance to guide people. They enjoy their travels quite a lot and are very sociable.
I could do that.
You don't have clairvoyance. You're not an oracle. You're a snake. Which is ironic. I never have seen a snake in heaven before. He grumbled. Maybe demons were just too individual for heaven. Could that be it? Oh god, that was it. Individuality. Your old nemesis. Just kidding. Your mouth slowly turned into a smile. Pentious, it might very well be that due to the unique personalities of demons, you are unable to be categorized by the current system. He deadpanned.
That is what I've been trying to say since we sat down.
Oh. You fell back in your chair. Well, sorry for dismissing you. Feeling defeated, you cleaned up the table before going on your computer. I think I know what to do, but this won't be pretty.
Oh? Now I'm curious.
I'm going to write a re-evaluation application, which is something that happens occasionally should we send an innocent into the wrong virtue. I'm gonna add the recommendation to give you a nomadic lifestyle. Excitedly, the snake clapped his hands. You would take up a storm for at least 30 minutes straight, during which the visible happiness of the snake turned into a bored deadpan. And sent. You sighed, leaning back in your chair.
What now?
You gulped. Well, I suppose we wait. Why don't you go home? He blinked with a mild smile, and that's when you remembered. Oh yeah, he was homeless right now. Not that that was a bad thing per se. He just sat at the local Hartbucks, drinking coffee or shakes and eating cake until the next appointment. Sometimes he even participated in one of Central's nightclub activities. Curiously enough, the club scene of heaven was very similar to hell's, just with much, much less drugs. The only stuff to get you inebriated in heaven really were mushrooms, weed, and alcohol. Oh, and there were no sex rooms. To the disappointment of Sir Pentious. And so the snake gave you big puppy eyes. Since day one, he had tried crashing at your place, as you were the first friendly angel he ever met, outside of Emily. But that would be super unprofessional. You inhaled deeply. He was really trying to make you feel like the bad guy here.
It gets cold at night.
He cried, and you deadpanned.
Okay, fine. It is never too cold in heaven, but I'd really like to sleep for once.
One night. His wing-shaped snake hood puffed up excitedly. And only if you get me a coffee first. So that at the very least you could pretend like it was a date or something. And so, a short while later, the both of you stepped outside of Civil Affairs, towards a nearby Hartbucks. You had spent the entire day going through the humility banner together, and both of you were exhausted. Sitting down outside, you ordered. And then started a conversation.
I'm glad the initial excitement is over,
He hissed.
I feel so heavenly by now.
Right. And then you smiled. I'm just worried about the implications of it all.
I'm listening.
Well, I suppose what you did down there wasn't too bad. He bit his lower lip. In hindsight, he had been a terrible gang boss. I'm just thinking, doesn't this mean what you do on Earth doesn't really matter in the end, if you can get redeemed even as a demon? Sir Pentious shrugged.
I think not everyone will be redeemed. Some people are rotten to the core. And that comes from me, a former demon.
He placed both hands on his chest.
I just think some people deserve a second chance.
I suppose I can vibe with that, you said quietly. The two of you went silent for a few seconds, and then he spoke up again.
So, I have a very curious and probably personal question.
You didn't respond, you just looked at him.
Can I see what's under your blindfold?
You blushed. That was an oddly personal question. You were a nun angel of the justice subcategory. You had smooth, dark skin and black lips, and a humanoid body. In fact, it was also surprisingly voluptuous. You had more TNA than you ever had while you were alive. You were dressed in a black and white hooded nun robe with golden crosses and Christian symbols adorning it. And your eyes and forehead were covered by a white blindfold. Your wings were located just above your ears, creating little bumps on your hood. And your halo was glowing in a pale white. In its center hovered a yellow round orb out of which you could see. It was strange seeing yourself in third person, but by now you had gotten used to it.
Is this not a good question? I've been curious the moment I saw you, Miss Blossom.
Turning your head away, you very rarely got that question, because normally angels accepted that justice angels just were blindfolded. Though Pentious had been a demon, most likely he wasn't used yet to keeping his mouth shut. After you regained your composure, you exhaled. I feel like we shouldn't do that in public. It's indecent. And horrifying, you thought. Sir Pentious blinked.
Really?
His mind was running wild. And thankfully your orders arrived, finally distracting him. Cake and coffee. After swallowing his first bite, he asked,
So, where do you live, Miss Blossom?
In Central, since I work here. You looked around. It's that one. You pointed at one of the giant skyscrapers.
Yeah, there's so many, I doubt I know which one exactly you're pointing at.
Yeah, sorry. I hope you don't mind me asking, how was hell? He deadpanned and you nodded. Like hell, hark. He chuckled.
Yeah, but no, it's not that bad. Arguably, it's very earthy.
I feel like there's an opportunity for social commentary here, but I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Very much like Detroit.
You nodded quietly.
But like, the worst people you can imagine also have superpowers.
What were your powers? He shrugged.
Minor hypnosis. Never was more than a stun ability, really. My bite was venomous. But these eyes on my body...
He held up his slithering tail, which did in fact have eye symbols on it, like a more detailed python.
Down there, they actually worked, so I could see most things around me. Oh, I'm also a skilled mechanic. And I love baking!
You smiled softly. I see. It seems as if the worse a person was in life, the stronger they were in hell. The opposite being true for heaven. I wish I could do things, though. I suppose I wasn't good enough for powers. The only thing that could classify as power was the ability to see with the orb inside your halo. Giving you technically a camera they could place anywhere, but, well, it made sense. A sinner with a lot of powers was cocky and would put themselves in harm, and of course, abuse their powerful abilities and therefore be more irredeemable than they already were. After you swallowed your final bite, you looked at Sir Pentious. There were more questions you wanted to ask, though you knew their answers already. They were stuff that you had already discussed in the past. It was just to hear the answers again. He had such interesting answers to them. Such as who he was when he was alive, and how he managed to redeem himself, etc. It had been really interesting. Plus, you loved asking him stuff about Sarah and Emily. You had never interacted with the Seraphim before, though you did know their names, knew how they looked like, and generally how they acted. Plus, you had never seen a demon before. It was surprising to you that his minor celebrity status only lasted so shortly, though the ministry was probably responsible for that. After all, he spent over a year there in custody to make absolutely sure that no foul play was happening. It was like reverse martyrdom. If, for instance, Jesus Christ hadn't been crucified and just left to rot in prison, he would have never become the figurehead of a religion, and probably heaven would be at least 50% smaller, if not more, since he spoke the truth. Strange thing to think about, and something many angels needed to cope with for months, if not years, when they first arrived, especially when they had been atheists in life. That was another reason for Central. It allowed innocent born to live here, albeit temporarily, to get used to the realities of life and afterlife in a more Earth-like environment. Heck, you knew there was an entire group of angel therapists dedicated to helping Satanists, of all people, to get adjusted to the reality that they had been good people, and therefore went to heaven. You did imagine the conversations being quite funny. It was probably stuff like, "But I drank the blood of the innocent," with the therapist then deadpanning and saying, "It was tomato juice. It wasn't blood, even though it was symbolical." Pentious finished his coffee, his thin, long snake tongue dragging across his lips.
Good coffee.
Even in paradise, getting good coffee was difficult. Though an eternity of everything just being perfect would become boring after a while. Ah well. It were the little things. Sir Pentious smiled cutely as he relished in the aftertaste of the coffee. It soon was time to head home. As you walked down a brightly lit hallway inside the building of your apartment, Sir Pentious finally asked,
Why is it so important we choose a virtue anyways?
Well, you shrugged. Central is just one city, and the virtues are planes. He furrowed his brows. Okay, let me use different words. Central is just one city. And sure, it's bigger than all cities on Earth combined. But it has an end to it. It has a maximum capacity. The virtues, by virtue of being planes of existence, are endless. The snake angel's eyes widened.
I suppose that makes sense.
Using your keycard, you entered your apartment. Like all apartments in Central, it was its own pocket dimension, as it was bigger than the space logically should be able to hold. It was like a big, expensive hotel room with a giant glass window opposite to the entrance wall. The living room had a small stairwell that led to the second floor. It had 2 bathrooms, one on each floor, though the second floor one was bigger and had a bathtub with a jacuzzi function. The walls were white, decorated with big, framed oil paintings depicting quiet and beautiful scenes from the Bible. A huge flat-screen TV hung on the wall, and the furniture was made out of polished dark oak, creating a beautiful contrast with the white walls and soft white carpeted floor.
Man, heaven is awesome!
Sir Pentious could practically hear the Harry Potter theme play in his head, with how magical he found this. And like an excited child, he slithered past you, exploring your living room and kitchen. You watched after him with a chuckle as you sat down. Meanwhile, he vanished upstairs.
So, this might be your bedroom, right?
He shouted down from up there. Yeah, but... Don't go in there, you shouted.
Huh? Why?
You got up from the sofa, rushing after him. The snake stood before the door, handle in hand. Please don't go in there, please.
Why? Is it messy?
I don't, necessarily want you snooping in my dressers.
Why? What could you be hiding in a dresser?
You blushed. And after a moment, he understood.
Oh. I suppose in heaven that's something you aren't proud of.
Your hands turned to fists. What are you talking about? To de-escalate the situation, he raised both hands.
It's fine, Miss Blossom. It's fine.
He snickered. Grumbling, you went back downstairs while he was smiling. He sat down next to you on the sofa. You had a hand placed on your chest to calm down. Technically, you had quite literally invited a demon into your house after all.
So, what about that blindfold?
You're going straight to the point, huh?
I'm curious.
You sighed and leaned against the back of the cushion of your seat. Fine. Take it off. You offered yourself to him. Sir Pentious anxiously sighed before slowly slithering off of the cushion, leaning down before you. Gently he removed your hood, his heart beating fast, and he blinked.
You got white hair?
Yes? You tilted your head.
It's so silvery.
He chuckled as his claws gently combed through your silky smooth hair. Stop! You blushed hard. With a dirty grin, he took the rim of your blindfold and pushed it up to your forehead. You felt a brush of cool air whip across your face, and even though he was smiling, he said, almost disappointed,
What's so bad about this?
What do you mean? I'm hideous.
You look fine.
Your body became stiff. Your visage usually horrified people, as you didn't have eyes. Your face looked like your eyeballs themselves had caught on fire during your ascension from within, leaving behind only scarred tissue and ugly black holes. The skin around them thick, veiny, and occasionally glowing in a light orange as if the wounds were still hot. Normally, angels reacted with disgust or tried calling for help. Though all angels of justice had this scarring. After all, justice was meant to be blind. And the orb saw for you. His hands moved down from your blindfold to your smooth cheeks. His smile was intoxicating. his hands so warm.
Dare I say, you're beautiful.
Screw professionalism. You lunged forward, taking him completely by surprise. He fell to the ground, you on top of him, your lips pressing on his. In surprise, he almost pushed you off, but your mouth felt great against the scales of his lips. They were very fine, very sensitive too, especially something as luscious as your soft and supple flesh. His eyes rolled back. He hummed. So this is how angels kissed, huh? He could feel it. Energy, electricity, divinity. And now that he was an angel too, he could feel the powers combine. It was like a second kiss, more deeper, more psychological. His entire body shivered, his mind trying to comprehend the pleasure he was getting. And it was just a kiss. A kiss without a tongue. Okay, there it was. There was your tongue. Thick, slimy, soft, yet strong. It pushed past his lips as your body rhythmically grinded against his, swishing and sloshing inside his mouth. He could taste some sweetness from the cake you ate earlier still. So wet. So hot. He couldn't handle it. The snake squealed like a dog toy before going limp. With your tongue hanging out of your mouth, you pulled yourself off of his head. A thick string of sweet salvia connecting your mouth. It shimmered in the pale light of your apartment. What's wrong? You asked. After a moment his eyes rolled, returning to their usual place. He looked right at your orb. He saw it as meeting your eyes.
I just felt pleasure I never thought possible from a simple kiss, Miss Blossom.
You smirked as you opened up your robe, allowing your body freedom. Biting your lower lip, you mused. We haven't even gotten to the main course yet, Pentious. Also, call me Anne. You leaned back down on top of him, making sure he was fully enveloped by your bosom before you whispered into his ear hole. The safe word is nomad. Thank you for watching my video up until the very end. But before I say goodbye, I would like to thank all of my lovely darling butlers and stewards. Melothia, Anonymous Weep, Sleepy Town, Angel, Zachary, Nicodemus D, Ash Wisdom, Ikea, The Tribute, AJ Anime Girl. Thank you for your support. And one last thing, I would like to thank all of my other lovely mates for being lovely supporters. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.